Hey friends, I don't fully know what this is going to be yet, but every so often I write a post or I have an idea and I think this would be so much better as a video. So we're trying something new today. Let me know if you want to see more of it or if you hate it, never want to see it again. I'm open to any criticisms and suggestions, but I thought I would talk about the Georgette Heyer that I've read this year. I've read 16 of her books between February and May. I haven't talked about them in any of my other wrap-up posts, but I just find her writing really charming and easy, and her stories typically have fairly low stakes, and the characters are just charming, and her books were just what I needed in the last few months. If you are not aware of Georgette Heyer, she was a 20th century writer. She published, I think, over 50 books between the 1920s and the 70s. She was really prolific, and she's kind of considered the pioneer of the Regency romance genre, although personally I consider her books more historical fiction than genre romance. She's also known for having done a lot of research into the time period and for her books being really accurate, which I think may be a large part of why her books work so much better for me than modern Regency romance, but that's a different discussion for another time. But anyway, yeah, so I've read a lot of her books this year and I thought I would rank them, because why not? Most of the choices I made about which ones I wanted to read were based on A, which ones I could find the audiobooks of from the library, and B, a blog post by Lynette Moss, which categorises all of Heyer's heroes. I will link it everywhere where it's relevant. And you will notice a pattern as we go along that the less rakish the hero, the more I enjoyed the book. So I largely used this blog post to figure out which ones I thought I would actually enjoy. And I think it worked out pretty well, as we'll see. I'm not using the whole tier ranking setup that people have, but I do have 5 categories, and within those books are also roughly ranked. There are 16 books, so I will try and keep it fairly short. I won't summarise the plot too much, and here we go. Also, don't be put off by the covers. They are hideous, but 9 times out of 10 they have no connection to the plot whatsoever, so just ignore the covers. Okay, let's go. So, starting from worst to best, the bottom category is Vile and Abominable Creature, and there's actually only one book in this category, and it's the only one that I didn't read in 2020, but it's the only other Georgette Heyer book I've read, so I thought I may as well include it. And it's Devil's Cub. This was one of the first books I read of hers before I had learned to research them before I started, and I hated it. Apparently on Goodreads I gave it 3 stars at the time, but in my head it looms much worse. The hero is just a terrible person. He's not just a rake, but he's also, the book opens with him murdering someone, and he's just really horrible to everyone around him, and he never, over the course of the book, feels remorse or really redeems himself. And the romance isn't bad, it's not as toxic as it could be. The hero is very kind of independent and capable and really gives it back to him in equal measure when he's mean to her, but I just couldn't root for the hero, and that really just ruined the whole thing for me. If you don't mind that kind of hero, then it may work better for you. It is a fairly popular one generally, so just, take my opinion with however much salt you feel like. The next category is An Atrocious Person. There are only 2 books in this one. The first is An Infamous Army. This one had a very nice hero, actually. He's Lynette Moss's capable self-made man category, which is actually my favourite category, and we'll see a lot more of them as we go along. But unfortunately, the heroine was extremely rakish, and I didn't like that any better than I like the reverse. I just found Barbara completely insufferable. I didn't like reading about her, I didn't care about anything she did, and I wasn't at all convinced by her ending. Also, the book is, apart from the romance, it's mainly war fiction. It's set against the Battle of Waterloo, and apparently it's so accurate that the book is actually used for training at Sandhurst, which is one of the major military academies in the UK, which, that's great for it, but I found it just horrifically boring. It really reminded me of some of the war chapters in War and Peace, and I just really didn't enjoy the experience of reading the book. And the other book in this category is Venetia. Now, the caveat for this one is that the audiobook version that I listened to was abridged, just because that's all the library had, and I mainly picked it up because it was narrated by Richard Armitage, and I thought, hey, why not? And I liked Venetia herself. She was, again, very, sensible, capable, but I didn't like Damerel, the hero, at all. Again, he was extremely rakish, and at least in the abridged version I listened to, we never really saw him becoming a better person. Their relationship is fine, but I didn't appreciate the person Venetia becomes because of her relationship with him, if that makes sense. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but anyway, again, the full version of the book may be better, but personally the version I read, I didn't enjoy it. So moving swiftly into the third category, this is a person of affluence, if not of taste. The category titles are all quotes that Heyer characters call each other, by the way, if that wasn't clear. So this is the middle category. It's the books that are kind of meh. Either I have sort of middling feelings, or I liked some parts, didn't like some parts. Anyway, we'll get into it. So the bottom of this category is Friday's Child, and this one's really on the border of this category and an atrocious person, because I really hated the experience of reading it. But I can see what Heyer was doing, and it's not a bad book. This is the story of two really young and immature people who need to learn and grow before they can have a happy marriage, and who need to learn a lot more about themselves and each other. They get married very young, and they need to learn and experience a lot more about themselves and each other before they can have a healthy relationship. And it's a pretty good depiction of that, I think. It feels realistic and the characters feel well drawn, but I just found them both really annoying. They're supposed to be immature, that's the whole point, but I just didn't enjoy reading about it, and I kind of just hated the experience of it. So again, it's not a bad book, but it wasn't for me. The next in this category is Cousin Kate, which is kind of a weird one. This was written late in Heyer's career, and it's kind of her attempt at a gothic novel, though I question whether it technically fits the gothic definition, but regardless, it's just tonally quite a bit different from her others. It's trying to deal with heavier topics and mental health in particular, but it's not totally successful because it is so of its time. I liked Kate herself, the heroine. Again, she's the sort of good kind of capable, self-assured heroine. She really cares about her family. She's very caring and kind, and she really wants to do the right thing, and the romance that she has was also very sweet and fine, but I think that the depth that the book is trying to have just holds it back a little bit. It just quite slightly misses the mark on some issues. Next in this category is The Black Moth, which we've gone from one of Heyer's last books to, in fact, the first that she ever published. Although, strangely enough, it felt the closest to a modern historical romance than compared to her other books, which was interesting. This one, again, was fine, but there were just too many characters, and I didn't care about them. There are two main couples. I liked one of them, but in the other one, I hated the wife character, Lavinia, and we also spend a lot of time with Lavinia's brother, Tracy. Both of them are extremely rakish, and I hated them both. I didn't enjoy reading about them or Lavinia's relationship with her husband, who deserved much better than her. And the whole thing was just unpleasant and boring and just not my thing. Also, the plot in this one was a bit precarious because the entire thing is predicated on the fact that it's more honourable to be a highwayman than to cheat at cards, which maybe, but I'm not sure if I'm totally convinced about that. It's not a bad book, it's perfectly fine. Like, you can see the beginnings of Heyer's style and her writing and her characters that would become sort of a slightly more polished style, but it's not one I would necessarily recommend, especially if you're just starting out with Heyer. Next in this category is Charity Girl. This was, again, one of Heyer's last books, and it kind of just feels like half-heartedly recycling some of her old characters and plots. The romance in this one sort of feels even more of an afterthought than usual. The whole thing is just a bit flat. It's not bad, I still had fun with it, but it's not particularly memorable, and if the synopsis sounds interesting to you, I would recommend that you try The Foundling instead, which is very similar but much better. And finally in this category is Behold, Here's Poison. This one is a bit different because it's a contemporary mystery, which is the other main genre that she wrote. Contemporary being obviously to Heyer's time when it was published, so 1930s. Mystery isn't really my genre. I haven't read many, so I don't know how it compares to sort of other mysteries generally and the ones that were being written at the time. For instance, I think Agatha Christie was writing some of her books around the same time, so I can't speak to that. Otherwise, I found that the characters were all completely insufferable, which I realised while I was reading this might be part of the reason why I don't gravitate to mysteries very often. But I did still like the writing. The writing style still has all of Heyer's charm, and after finishing it, I do want to read more of her mysteries, so I call that a win overall. The next category, this is the second best category, so all of these books, which they're not quite favourites, but I did really enjoy them all and would recommend them. So the bottom of this category is The Quiet Gentleman. This was fine, it was good. I think I might have enjoyed it more if I hadn't read it so close to so many other books. I like this one fine. The heroine is, again, capable and sensible. I'm just now realising that there's a bit of a theme. But yeah, I liked the heroine and I liked the hero Gervais as well, and their romance was sweet. This one has got a bit of a mystery as well. It was fine. I liked it overall. Next is The Nonsuch, which again, I don't remember in great detail, but I remember liking it. The notes that I've written for myself in my spreadsheet are that I just love Ancilla, who's the hero. She's capable and sensible type, but she also has really strong morals, and she doesn't stand for any nonsense from the hero. She really keeps him in line and makes him stick to her principles, and I just love that about her. There's also a lot of humour in this one. So Ancilla, when we meet her, is the governess to Tiffany, who's the worst child ever to be. She's completely insufferable, but seeing how Ancilla and Waldo, who's the hero, manage her and kind of deal with her tantrums is just great fun. So that's that one. Next in this category is The Corinthian, which I really liked this one when I first finished it. My feelings have sort of faded over time a bit, but I did still enjoy this. This is one of the most hijinksy plots. The book literally starts with the heroine falling into the hero's arms, literally falling into his arms as she climbs out of the window, escaping her abusive aunt. And then there's also stolen jewels and cross-dressing and murder and all kinds of things. So it's just a wild time. I liked Pen, the hero, Penelope. She's young but very independent, very cheerful. The romance is a little bit grumpy sunshine. Although I wasn't a huge fan of the romance because there's a pretty big age gap between Pen and Richard, and it's referenced repeatedly how young and naive Pen is, which I just found a bit uncomfortable. But overall, if you're not thinking too deeply about it, it's just a fun, wacky time. The next best in this category is A Civil Contract, which again is a bit of a different one from Heyer. This is sort of technically a marriage of convenience, but not quite in the way a modern reader might expect it. The plot is a lot more restrained than a lot of her other ones, compared to something like The Corinthians. There's no kind of wacky hijinks or anything like that, crazy adventures, but in my opinion, some of the best themes and character work are in this book. I loved the heroine, Jenny. Jenny deserves the world. I liked Adam too, the hero. I found him a little bit annoying, but he was fine overall. And I thought the side characters in this one were particularly well drawn. Heyer's side characters are always brilliant, but I really liked these ones in particular. But especially in this book, it was the themes of sort of duty and family and making the best of your situation. And I really appreciated what this book was doing and saying. Next, we have The Tollgate, which is... this one's primarily a mystery, not a romance. There's a very tiny, very insta-lovey romance subplot. But in this one, I really liked the hero, John. He's, again, the capable, self-made man category. And he's just very kind and sweet. And the whole plot of the book begins when he agrees to help a young boy whose father's gone missing. And this is sort of pretty considerable inconvenience to him, but he just agrees to do it because the boy's scared and he's kind, and it's just really lovely. And this book is again pretty hijinksy. There's smuggling and secret identities and plenty going on. In my memory, it's not too deep, and it's just fun. The next, second to last in this category is A False Colours, and this book, I was like, when I first finished this book, I was somewhat meh about it, but since then I've re-downloaded it and reread certain parts of it just over and over, and now I'm kind of obsessed. This book involves the hero pretending to be his twin and accidentally falling in love with the girl his twin was about to enter into a marriage of convenience with. It's just a wild time. And this one I found really interesting because another author sort of could have developed their relationships a lot more. And Heyer drops all these hints about sort of how the relationships have more emotional depth, but then the characters go, oh no, we don't want to talk about our feelings, and move on. And from any other author, I would have thought that this was like bad writing or underdeveloped relationships and characters, but in this story it just really works. You don't need any of that development. It's just fun by itself. Kit, the hero, is another of the capable self-made man. I love him. Cressy, the heroine, is again the sensible and capable mould. She's a bit younger than the typical sensible, capable heroines though, I think, and has a bit more of a sense of humour, so the whole thing is just a riot and I loved it. And finally in this category is The Foundling. This one was really on the cusp of this category and the next one, which is my top favourites. The reason it is in this category is because it took me a little while to get into it. Sort of for almost the first 50%, I really thought I wasn't going to like it. So I didn't think it could quite go into the favourites, but it's definitely one of my favourite Heyers. It's definitely up there. I definitely loved it. The hero of this one is in the youth coming of age category, which is the same category as Sherry in Friday's Child, which I hated. But somehow it really worked here. Gilly is really annoying at first, which I think is part of why it took me so long to get into this one. But later on, when he's tested, he really surprises everyone and himself with how capable he is and how much he can do. And I just loved that. I loved his development. Gilly is just so sweet and kind, and I just loved his relationships with all of the side characters. Again, the side characters in this one were particularly brilliant. And this is another one where I re-listen to parts from it regularly, and I just love everything about it now. The main romance is also sweet. It's sort of a friends to lovers, sort of. At the beginning, the parents of the hero and the heroine decide that they may as well get married, and they've always been friends, so they agree, even though they're not especially excited about it. But over the course of the book, they learn much more about each other and realise that they really do like each other, and it's just really sweet, and I really like it. So now, going into the final category, the embodiment of her ideal, the last two books, my absolute favourites. The first is The Unknown Ajax, which is, again, involving a capable self-made man. Really, you can tell what my type is. But Hugo is just so funny and so down to earth, and the way he compares with his Earl grandfather, and the way he just bucks every expectation that everyone has of him, and he's so dry and so funny, and I just love him. The side characters are also great in this one, and as well as Anthea, who's the heroine. She's practical. The way she deals with the chaos around her is just great. The romance is fairly understated in this one, but I thought it was quite sweet. The way the two of them kind of see each other, the way no one else understands them, and the climax scene. Pretty much all of Heyer's books have a final climax scene where the hijinks of the plot come to a head, and the one in this one was just so funny and so great. And yeah, I love this book so much, and I kind of want to reread it now. And finally, my top favourite Georgette Heyer is Cotillion. This is the first Heyer book I ever read, and I read it again in 2022, and it's still my favourite. I can't quite work out why I love it more than, for instance, Ajax or The Foundling, and I think some of it might just be emotional attachment from it being the first, but it's just brilliant. The whole book is just so fun and so sweet, and Kitty, who's the heroine, is she's very naive ingenue type. She's very sweet and gets her way by being charming, but also she has her own wishes and ideas, and she can be very stubborn when she wants to be, and I thought she was brilliant. And I also loved the hero. I sort of don't want to say anything else about him, because I think part of the fun of reading this book the first time is trying to work out who Kitty actually will end up with. Although if you know anything about me, or if you've noticed a trend among the books that I've been talking about, it will not be hard for you to guess which one it is once you start the book. But regardless, I'm not going to say anything more. I just love this book. I love everything about it. It's just so comforting and charming and sweet, and I just love it. So there we have the ranking of all of the Georgette Heyer books that I have read so far. If you've read any of the ones on this list, let me know if you agree with my thoughts. If you've read any others, let me know what you thought of them and if you think that I will like them. I think I'm sort of coming to the end of the Regencies that I want to try. There are a few more on my list, but not very many. Not really interested in reading the ones with rakes, as I'm sure you will have gathered from this post/video, whatever this turns out to be. But yeah, and let me know what you think of this new format. I'm not sure if there will be more like this, but we'll see what I think of it once it's done. But thank you for watching, listening, reading, and I hope you're all doing well. I don't really know how else to end this, so bye.